Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we are going to try to dismantle a myth.
A big one.
A really big one. It's a myth that I think most of us, we actually enjoy believing because it's clean.
It is. It's heroic, and it fits perfectly on a T-shirt. It's the origin story of hip-hop.
Right.
I mean, if you ask the average person how hip-hop started, they want a date. They want a patient zero.
Yes.
They want to say, on August 11th, 1973, DJ Kool Herc threw a party, and boom, hip-hop was born.
Exactly. We want the plaque, we want the statue, we want that cinematic moment where the lightning strikes.
Mm-hmm.
But today, we're digging into research that suggests the reality was, well, it was way messier, darker, and honestly, a lot more interesting than just one party in a rec room.
Right. We're looking at the era before the definitions.
The nameless era.
We're calling it the nameless era.
Yeah.
We are zooming right in on the South Bronx in the late 1960s, very early 70s. This is the primordial soup.
So this is before Afrika Bambaataa.
Way before. This is the time before he stepped in to consolidate all these elements and actually give the culture a name.
So just to be clear for you listening,
Right.
there is no hip-hop yet. No billion-dollar industry, no Super Bowl halftime shows.
No manifesto.
None of that. There's just noise, there's energy, and a bunch of teenagers trying to survive in a city that had, for all intents and purposes, collapsed around them.
And our mission today is really to figure out how a global culture emerged from a vacuum.
And vacuum is the perfect word, isn't it?
It is, because the research is pretty clear that hip-hop didn't start as some kind of artistic choice. It started as a survival mechanism in a literal void.
Okay, so let's go there. Let's stand in the South Bronx, say 1970.
Okay.
I think we all have this pop culture image of it being, gritty or rough, like a movie set.
Right.
But the source material paints a picture that is, it's terrifying. This wasn't just a bad neighborhood. It was a disaster zone.
It was a state of total catastrophic urban decay. To understand why this culture happened, you absolutely have to understand the physical destruction of the landscape.
It starts with the highway project, right?
It starts with the Cross Bronx Expressway, this massive slab of concrete that was just plowed directly through the heart of the Bronx.
Wow.
It didn't just move traffic, it physically severed neighborhoods, it cut communities in half, destroyed the local economy, displaced thousands.
And when the economy collapses, the manufacturing jobs just disappear.
Vanished, and naturally anyone who could afford to leave left.
The white flight.
Sociologists call it white flight, but pretty soon it was middle-class flight of all races. The population just plummeted.
And the people left behind.
People left behind, mostly Black and Latino families, were trapped in a landscape of abandoned buildings.
And this is where the stats in the research they blew my mind. We're not talking about a few boarded up windows here.
No. We're talking about arson on an industrial scale.
Industrial scale.
It's staggering. Between roughly 1970 and 1975, there were something like 30,000 fires set in the South Bronx.
30,000.
Landlords were burning their own buildings for insurance money because they couldn't collect rent anymore. And the city had this policy of benign neglect.
Which basically meant what?
It meant closing fire stations and withdrawing police services. They just walked away.
So let's just pause for a second. You're a teenager in 1971. You walk outside. Your block smells like smoke. There are piles of rubble where your friend's house was.
The streetlights might not work. The cops aren't coming.
It sounds less like New York City and more like, post-war Europe.
That is exactly the comparison that many historians make. It was a war zone without a war.
And that brings us to the most crucial point for the culture.
The urban void.
Unpack that for us.
Well, think about where culture is supposed to happen. You go to a concert hall, a club, a funded community center, a music school.
Right, formal places.
All of those institutions in the South Bronx of the early 70s were gone. They had burned down, closed down, or lost their funding.
So there's literally nowhere to go.
Nowhere formal. But, nature abhors a vacuum. You had thousands of young people with all this energy and no designated spaces.
So they took over.
They reclaimed the margins. They took over the spaces nobody else wanted.
We're talking about abandoned school gyms, community centers where the staff had just quit.
Apartment courtyards, public parks that had been completely neglected by the city.
And that's the aha moment.
Precisely. The research argues that hip-hop didn't start with music. It started with the availability of these empty spaces. Because the management was loose or just non-existent, it became a petri dish.
Right.
It allowed for this do-it-yourself experimentation that never would have been allowed in a supervised formal club.
If you're in a formal club, there are rules. There's a manager telling you what to play.
Of course.
But if you've broken into a gym or you're setting up in a park, the only rule is keep the people moving.
Exactly. The chaos was the prerequisite for the creativity. And the person who had to tame that chaos, the architect of this new reality, was the DJ.
Okay, let's reframe the DJ. Because today, DJ means a superstar on a private jet pressing play on a MacBook. But in the nameless era, the DJ was basically a rogue utility worker.
That's a great way to put it. They were not viewed as artists yet. They were technicians and event managers. Their primary job was not good taste, it was infrastructure.
Because there was no infrastructure.
Right. If you want to throw a party in a park in a bankrupt city, where do you get the power?
You steal it.
You steal it. The early DJs, figures like Kool Herc and the ones who came after, had to literally wire their sound systems into the bases of streetlights.
I mean, just think about the risk there. You're standing in a puddle, splicing live wires into a city lamppost just to power your turntables.
It's high stakes. If you wire it wrong, the party's over.
Or you're dead.
Or you're dead. And the equipment itself, it wasn't sleek.
Yeah.
Oh, not at all. They called the speakers coffins. These were massive, handcrafted wooden boxes stuffed with as many woofers as they could find. Heavy, ugly, and loud. The competition wasn't about who had the rarest record. It was about who had the loudest system.
Who could physically dominate the park.
It's a sonic arms race in a neighborhood the city forgot.
And that sonic dominance, that's what leads to the musical breakthrough.
It does. The DJs were technicians, but they were also observers. They were watching the crowd with an eagle eye because, remember, this is a tough crowd. If you lose them, fights break out.
So they're washing the floor. What do they see?
They see that the energy isn't constant. They noticed that when they played funk and soul records, James Brown, the Incredible Bongo Band, the crowd was waiting for something specific.
The break.
They'd be bobbing their heads during the verses, but when the break hit,
chaos.
Total chaos. That's the part where the vocals drop out, the melody drops out, and it's just the drummer and the bass line.
Just that raw rhythm. It might only be 5 seconds long.
Exactly. But the DJs saw the dancers just explode during those 5 seconds. So the DJ faces a practical problem. The crowd wants this intense 5-second moment, but it's too short.
The energy spikes and then it just dies when the singer comes back in.
So they needed to hack the record. They needed to manipulate time.
And that's the technique.
That's the birth of the technique. They started buying 2 copies of the same record.
2 copies.
They play the break on the left turntable, and while that's playing, they cue up the exact same break on the right turntable. The first one ends, they switch.
The merry-go-round.
The merry-go-round. They could make a 5-second drum solo last for 10 minutes.
I love this because it just strips away the whole genius in the ivory tower idea.
It does.
They didn't do this because they studied music theory. They did it because they were looking at a crowd of sweaty teenagers in a gym and said, they like the drums. How do I give them more drums?
It was purely functional. The research emphasizes this so heavily. The musical structure of hip-hop was reorganized based on the physical reaction of the audience.
So the DJ isn't just playing songs.
They're engineering the energy of the room to keep the peace and keep the party going.
And when you change the music that drastically, I mean, when you turn a song into an endless drum loop, the dancing has to change too.
Oh, absolutely.
You can't just do the 2-step to a 10-minute drum solo.
No, the break demanded a new kind of movement. This is where the term break boy or b-boy comes from.
They were the ones who waited for the break.
They were, and the research points out something really specific about the direction of the dance. It went from vertical
to horizontal.
Yes. Before this, social dancing was upright. You're cool, you're rhythmic. But the energy of the break beat is aggressive. It's percussive. It drove the dancers to the floor.
It's almost athletic.
It is entirely athletic. We see the development of footwork, the drops, the spins, and you have to remember the surface they're dancing on.
Concrete.
Concrete in parks or hardwood in gyms. It's hard, it's fast, and it's dangerous.
And it's all happening in the cipher.
The circle. And this is crucial. This wasn't a performance on a stage for some distant audience.
No.
It was a circle of your peers, you stepping to the middle, and you are being judged immediately.
It's gladiatorial.
It is. If you messed up, you got laughed out of the circle. If you killed it, you got respect. It was an immediate feedback loop.
So the dance isn't a routine.
It's a conversation, an argument even, with the DJ's beat.
So we have the DJ as the architect, building the wall of sound. We have the B-boys physically manifesting that energy on the floor. But what about the voice? Because when we say hip-hop today, the first thing we think of is the rapper. Where were the rappers in 1971?
They were there, but they weren't rappers yet. They were MCs, masters of ceremonies.
And just like the DJ, their role was utilitarian at first.
Totally utilitarian. The examples in the notes are amazing. It was not poetry. It was crowd control.
Literally.
Literally. The MC's job was to talk over the music to keep things organized. They were making announcements.
Like what?
Hey, someone move the green Chevy. You're blocking the hydrant. Hey, nobody fight. We're here to have a good time. School starts tomorrow. Get home safe.
So it's less Jay-Z and more. Like a high school principal with a microphone.
A principal with rhythm. Because the beat is playing, they had to say these things in time.
Right.
They started chanting, throw your hands in the air. Yes, yes, y'all. Short, rhythmic phrases to punch up the energy.
So hype man role.
Exactly. There were no complex personal narratives yet. No I have a dream speeches.
Yeah.
It was a tool to maintain the party atmosphere.
This concept of group maintenance is so important.
The party was a fragile thing in a violent neighborhood. The MC used their voice to glue the crowd together.
So the voice was the glue. The beat was the foundation. The dance was the expression. But there's a fourth element that was happening at the same time. It wasn't necessarily at the party, but it was surrounding it. It was on the trains kids took to get there.
Graffiti.
Graffiti.
And sometimes people struggle to connect graffiti to the music, right? It seems like a different art form.
It does.
But the source material argues they are the exact same impulse. It is all about occupation.
Occupation. Okay, that ties right back to our urban void concept.
Think about it. The city has abandoned you. You are invisible to the political system. You have no money, no property. How do you prove you exist?
You sign your name.
You sign your name, but not just on a piece of paper. You sign it on the subway train. And why the train?
Because it moves.
It moves. It takes your name out of the burning Bronx and parades it through Manhattan, where the rich people live.
It's advertising. It's saying, I am here and you have to look at me.
Exactly. The DJ occupies the soundscape of the park. The b-boy occupies the physical floor.
And the writer occupies the visual surface of the city.
It's a takeover.
A total takeover.
It's a total takeover. The motivation for all of these elements was the same. I am going to take this broken, abandoned infrastructure and I am going to put my stamp on it.
Whether that stamp is a spray-painted tag or a massive sound system blasting a breakbeat.
It really changes how you see the whole culture. It wasn't four random hobbies that just got grouped together. It was four different weapons used to fight the same enemy.
Erasure.
They were fighting against being erased.
That is powerful. And that brings us to the synthesis. This moment we're talking about, this nameless era. It's the chaos before the order.
Because eventually Afrika Bambaataa comes along.
Right.
Later in the 70s, Bambaataa sees all these things, the DJing, the MCing, the breaking, the writing, and he's the one who says, this is all one thing. We are going to call it hip-hop.
He gave it a name. He gave it a structure.
He did. But our deep dive today is really about honoring the time before that, the time when it was just a mass of nameless practitioners.
And that is the tragedy and the beauty of it.
It is. History loves a hero. We want to put a face on the currency. But the reality is that hip-hop was built by hundreds of nameless kids whose stories we will never know.
The kid who figured out a new freeze in a school hallway.
The girl who figured out a new way to wire a speaker.
The writer who tagged the 6 train in 1972 and never got famous.
It was a composite phenomenon. It was evolution, not invention. If you looked at the timeline, it's a slow accumulation.
Right.
Late 60s, the urban decay sets the stage. 1970, the void spaces are reclaimed.
71, 72, the breakbeat technique.
It evolves out of necessity. 1973, the MC role starts to generalize. And all through this, the trains are getting painted.
It was, and I'm quoting the research here, done before it was discussed.
And that's the key takeaway for me. This culture was strong because it wasn't a theory. They weren't writing essays about it. They were living it.
It was a tool.
It was a cultural device built to solve a problem. The problem was, how do we survive and feel joy in a war zone? And the solution was this culture.
It just reframes the whole idea of creativity. We think creativity is a luxury, something you do when you have free time and money. But this story proves that creativity is actually a survival instinct. When you take everything else away, people will create something from nothing just to prove they are alive.
It's the ultimate alchemy. They turn the noise of the city into music. They turn the ruins into dance floors.
And they did it without a manual, without a name. and without permission.
Mm-hmm.
So here's the thought I want to leave you with today. We've been looking back at the 1970s. We see the nameless era clearly now because we have the benefit of hindsight.
We know it turned into hip-hop, the biggest culture in the world.
But we couldn't see it then?
No. If you walked past that park in 1973, you would have just heard noise. You would not have known you were witnessing history.
Exactly. So what is the nameless era of right now? What are the kids doing today in the neglected spaces of the internet or the forgotten corners of our modern cities that doesn't have a name yet?
We always look for culture in the spotlight. But the next big thing is probably happening in the dark. It's probably happening in a place we think is a void.
There are probably kids right now inventing a new way to communicate or a new way to move or a new way to use technology just to survive their own version of the burning Bronx.
And we won't know what to call it.
Not for another 10 years.
We never do until it's too late to stop it.
Huge thanks to our expert for helping us map out this hidden history. It's a good reminder to look a little closer at the chaos around us.
My pleasure.
And to you listening, keep your eyes open. You never know when you might be standing in the middle of the next big thing. Thanks for listening to The Deep Dive. We'll see you next time.